argued before that the issue of security and fulfillment really are the product of how one's intent operates. I mean, if this is me, and that's the rest of the world that surrounds me, in any situation I can either construct my intent on what I'm getting, or I can construct my intent on what I'm giving. If I base my security or my fulfillment on what I'm getting from the world, because the world really gives me what I want at that particular point in time, I'll be both insecure and discontented. Whereas if I base my intent on the quality of my contribution or what I'm giving in any situation that I'm in, because I've always got control over that, I'll be secure and fulfilled. The problem, however, is that this issue about being able to give is not necessarily about being nice. It's about giving each situation its due. It's about doing what's appropriate. So if a hungry child asks you for food, the appropriate thing to do is to give the child food. Whereas if you come across a little old lady being beaten up by a thug in a park, the appropriate thing is to beat up the thug. So giving isn't always about behaving in a nice way. It's about acting either consistently with the generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in. And if we say that giving is about acting consistently with the generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in, it has to suggest that taking means getting your logic wrong. In other words, that you act in a situation that requires generosity in a so-called courageous way and vice versa. So if the hungry child asks you for food and you slap the child, then we'd accuse you of being selfish. And if the little old lady's being beaten up by the thug for a handbag and you run over and grab her bag and give it to the thug, and we ask you what you're doing, and you say, no, I'm being generous, we would say you're not being generous, you're being cowardly. So giving is about acting consistently with either the generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in. It's not necessarily about being nice. So in a sense, one can see giving as the root condition that has these two attributes of generosity and courage. And of these two kind of elements of giving, the primary element is generosity and the secondary element is courage. And the rationale for this is that if you're here to give, it's likely that your basic attitude to the world will be kind rather than confrontational. What's also important about this idea of giving each situation its due, of acting with either generosity or courage, is that these are things that you do in the world. If you like, they're about things that happen in the outward. You have to step into life to either act generously or courageously. What very often isn't apparent to us is that this capacity to do the right thing outwardly is actually based on an inward skill, and you can call that skill seeing things as they are. If you misappraise a situation, it's very difficult to give the situation its due. You have to see the thing as it is in order to give the situation its due. Now, if we say giving each situation its due is consistent with acting either with a generosity or courage that's operative in the situation that you're in, and we say giving each situation its due is also about rooted in seeing things as they are, it has to suggest that generosity and courage have inner equivalents as well. The inner equivalent that's consistent with generosity is gratitude. And the reason for this is that when you act generously, you're giving to give away. It's very important to note, to recognize this. If somebody gives you something, but their intent is in fact to make an investment, they're trying to develop a feeling of obligation that they can call on tomorrow, you wouldn't call their action generous. The action is only generous when it is given to give away. This capacity to give away is based on an appraisal of things, which is a recognition that you've received in excess of your due. Gratitude means you understand, you recognize that you've received in excess of your due. And it's precisely that you recognize that you've received in excess of your due that it's easy for you to give away. The inner equivalent of courage is trust. If I don't trust you, the only way I can learn to trust you is to take a risk. So in other words, it is my ability to take a risk and have that risk vindicated that creates the condition that I trust. So my trust enables my courage, and my courage enables trust. Now, if we have a look at the distinction between the primary and the secondary elements, then the first thing that becomes apparent is that they have a different orientation in terms of time. I mean, gratitude and generosity, if you like, are about looking at the past. You know, if I'm grateful, I'm looking at what has happened to me. Whereas trust and courage, in a sense, look at the future. If I'm courageous, I don't run away as the enemy come towards me, which sort of suggests that of these four categories of gratitude, generosity, courage, and trust, there's, if you like, a primary of the primary, which is gratitude. Because if I'm grateful, if I know I've received in excess of my due, it is easy for me to give away. If I know I've received in excess of my due in the past, I can therefore assume into the future that things will be well. I'll trust the future, which means it makes it easy for me to be courageous. So the core of cracking the code of all moral action is gratitude. Giving its situation its due, being here to give, acting with generosity and courage is nonsense if it's not rooted in gratitude. Gratitude is the master key.